Hello and welcome to the Red Room. Our guest today is Melissa Guyll. She is a game designer, and her husband David Guyll was already interviewed by us a month ago, maybe. So welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome to the Red Room, Melissa. And well, you didn't mention the name of the game. So David and Melissa wrote, besides the scenario, some scenarios for Dungeon World. They also are the authors of Dungeons and Delvers. So Melissa, how did you started playing role plays?
When I met David, that was back about 10 years ago. He had all these Dungeons and Dragons books, and he was having people come together, you know, where he was at the time in an apartment. And when we got together and moved in together, he was doing those games, you know, at our house. And so I would listen in, or I would hear it, and then I'd start questioning, you know, like, oh, what is this? What are you doing? And just kind of started to get interested in it. So then he's like, well, why don't you just join us in a game? And I was like, okay, but I was really nervous. I'm not a very social person. So we started in, I guess it was a beginning of a campaign for 3rd edition. And I went ahead and made a goblin wizard. And it kind of started out rough because a lot of the players just didn't want to start. It began in a bar or a tavern, and they just didn't want to get together for some reason. One person just brooding in one corner, and the other person was just sitting and ignoring the rest of the people. So, and I guess
how many players were there on the group? Sorry, just let me ask that. Do you remember how many players you had on that group?
4 or 5, because it was a roommate of his that also moved in with us, and his brothers, plus I think another woman who was playing. So
they never played, I suppose.
No, this was the first time for them too.
Yeah, because a regular player wouldn't just sit down and not do anything.
Well, it may happen. We had a player that was like that.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
that's true.
I think me and the other woman decided, you know, we had some kind of connection, and so then it kind of got together and we started off in the dungeon, and then David took over from there. So it wasn't that bad, and 3rd edition wasn't too bad either. It's pretty straightforward. I didn't have a lot of trouble, at least knowing what I was doing, even for a first time.
Had you know about role-playing games before that experience?
Just through video games. Again, that probably isn't the same thing.
Well, there are some of those that they try to emulate the experience anyway. So
right, yeah, gaining levels, experience, you know, having some stats.
Yeah, what kind of computer role playing did you play?
The first one I ever played was Final Fantasy VII. I actually quit that game because, again, I had never played a role-playing game before. And when it got to a specific point, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, I thought I did something wrong. And I kept redoing it over and over, thinking there was a different outcome and I was doing something wrong. And eventually I quit. But I did finish it later on in life. I did, you know, later on in my 20s, I replayed it. Because eventually someone's like, no, that's what's happen in the game. I was like, oh, okay. But it really bothered me that it happened. I didn't like it.
Yeah, that sometimes happens. I hate when that happens in computer games. I can deal with it in role-playing games, but in computer games it really annoys me.
I didn't really play anything else role-playing because that was really early on in my life. Like I was in middle school, or, you know, in a 12 years old or something around that. I can't remember, but later on in my 20s, I ended up going into some more role-playing games, mostly like Japanese RPGs, like the games. I like those. Or I did some online stuff like Final Fantasy XI. And then when World of Warcraft came out, I did some of that.
And at that time when you were playing computer role-playing games, did you ever heard about there were tabletop also besides those?
No, not until I met David did he
Huh.
really
Mhm.
tell me about any of those.
Well, that's interesting because I have a feeling that I feeling no, I'm certain that in the US role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games are much more popular than here. Here you can play computer role-playing games and never hear about tabletop ones because well there's no for once there are no conventions or there's a very small convention and very few game stores, so people that don't have many opportunity to hear about tabletops.
So I had heard of Dungeons and Dragons throughout my life.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the first time I heard about it was because I went to church with my mother as a kid, and you can imagine what they might have said there. So and that kind of
Yeah.
stuck with me. But David obviously was like, "What are you talking about?" So I'm a very open person, so I was like, I brushed it aside and tried it out, and I was like, "This is nothing like what they were saying." So, so I had heard of them, you
In the
know,
bad way.
Yeah.
that way, but I knew people like in high school that had their little groups and played it, and I didn't really, pay any attention. So
Yeah, because that was long after the Satanic Panic. That was
uh-huh.
that was
Yeah.
in the 80s, so
Yeah.
this was
Exactly.
a long time ago. I
Well,
thought
that
that
was in the
I thought in
early
the 90s people had stopped talking about that.
yes. Yeah.
Probably some people were still clinging on to the Satanic Panic, I guess.
It's strange, right? Because the kind of crowd that plays role-playing games, and they're mostly peaceful people, and you don't imagine really how did they got from Dungeons and Dragons to Satan.
Yes, I don't know how that connection was made, but somebody must have not liked it.
Probably the wizardry and all that. There are spells and those devilish things. I think they were
Like
there
witchcraft.
was the witchcraft.
Yeah.
I think there was some I'm not sure exactly what happened, but probably a shooting or something like that. And someone was playing role-playing games. Of course, things had nothing to do with each other, but people must have made a connection where there was no connection.
So you
Yeah.
started
And I
playing
think it
games.
came from
Yeah, continue, sorry.
it probably came from America too.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
so. There were some connections here in Europe, in Sweden, I think. I remember that because one of our favorite games, which is Cult, there were some problems with that game too. So it must have happened something in Sweden.
But Cult is a very dark game.
Yeah,
It's a horror game.
that
So
one is
I would
extremely
understand
dark.
that. And for Vampire, for example, or the World of Darkness games, that they would say, "Oh, this is satanic because it's called World of Darkness." Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, it's completely different. You're playing an adventure game. It's perfectly adequate for kids, so
Exactly.
no problem.
And
So
talking about playing with kids, so Melissa, so you guys started from, tell me a little bit about the games that you and David played, because we know that you started with the third edition, like you said, but then you evolved to your own game. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So well, for me personally, it went from third edition to fourth edition, and then fifth edition playtesting. And the fifth edition playtesting, I remember it turning out pretty good. And I was playing a monk, but then they changed the rules and they nerfed the monk down from like a fist of fury to just punching twice, something like that. If I don't know if I'm recalling it correctly or not, but that's where we went back to fourth edition to play some of that. And he even had me try and run my own little game in fourth edition. And that was overwhelming to begin with. I had some wolves that I was using, and I had a hard time just dealing with even all the moves that the wolves could do. And this is just a wolf. And I think that became the point where both of us were like, listen, maybe we can make something better. And that's where I think Black Book really, he started working on Black Book. I know we didn't publish, I can't remember which one came first, if it was the kids game or Black Book.
Yeah, I was confused when we talked with David, that I knew that you had a version for kids and a version for adults, and I didn't know which was which, but now I get it. So the red one is the version for kids, right? The red book.
Well, no. So
well, the one that has the simpler versions, because I was looking for them on drive-through, because I was trying to understand how can if someone is more interested in the kids book, how they will distinguish both of them.
Right. So I guess there's really confusion because of those names. I know that I think we both regret just leaving it the same. We really should have done like mini delvers or something like that for the kids game. That would have made more sense. I think if I remember correctly, Black Book was first, which is the D20, and it's pretty simplified. You only go from level 1 to 5. And it had like some other stats in it, like reflex and willpower and things to use for saves. But then we decided to do the Kickstarter for the kids game. And that's where the real Dungeons and Delvers title kind of came into more popularity. And then we did a second version of Black Book, which we called Dungeons and Delvers Red Book.
Yeah.
That's where it just, I get it. There's confusion there.
No, but now I have a copy of each of them, but I haven't read it, so I don't really know the differences yet. So let's go over it. So basically on rules, what are the difference between the kids book and the adults book? It's the types of dice is also, right?
Yes, let me start with the kids book. So the kids book is a dice pool system where it's like 1d4 or a d4, d6, d8, d10, and d12. Different. Those are all, you don't use a d20 in this at all. And you have a main stat that you would use for one type of dice. It'd be a d4, d6, d8, or etc. And then you have a skill you use with it, and you combine those two and roll. Sometimes you'll have talents that would add a dice to it. But then you take the top 2 rolls that you get. So if you did 3 different dice and you rolled an array of like 1, 3, and 6, well, you'd use 3 and 6 for getting that target number, because you would have a target number for the monsters when they would hit you, or a skill or whatever you wanted to do. So that's how that one works. And then for our D20 system, that's a lot more complex. There's a lot more involved. You have a D20, obviously you add whatever, like if you want to hit something, you add your hit, and then your damage plus whatever your strength is or your dexterity. And then there's the wound points and the vitality points. The vitality points are really for like exhaustion and getting bruised. And then when you go into wound points, you're starting to, bleed and get broken bones, stuff like that. So it is quite a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
The two are quite a bit different, but they have the same name.
Yeah. So you play with your kids. Let me just ask, what ages do they have for people that are interested with playing with their children? It's a nice way to introduce them to the role-playing game. So what age did you start them? And
I remember mostly with our daughter. So my son is 14 now. He just turned 14. My daughter's about ready to be 11. And then we have our 2.5-year-old who will be 3 in May. So
that one is too young to play.
Yeah, no, she's not. She hasn't quite been involved. She loves dice, though. She loves dice. I tell you what, she will put them in containers. She'll dump them out, and she doesn't know what she's doing with them, but she just loves a handful of dice. I don't know what it is. But so the other two, we started out pretty young. I think my son was like 8 or 9, and our daughter was just turning like 4 or 5. Just trying to get her to learn her math better. And my son is already great at math, so he was able to pick it up pretty well. But we would use them as a way to figure out what works with the kids' game, what was more confusing, what was easier for them to do, and the dice pool idea really helped with just the knowing which was what, like what does a D4 look like, what does a D6 look like, what does D8 look like. It's, you know, shapes and math. So, and not just that, but creativity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So in your case, your kids' book, it was really play tested with kids. So if anyone is looking for a game to play with their kids, the Dungeons and Delvers has been play tested extensively.
Some adults and stuff. Yeah, we did play test some adults, of course, and it seems like a lot of adults are really liking it as well. But mostly we focused on the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to get my niece to start playing, and my sister and my brother-in-law also to play with and probably I'll try that one. The only problem I have with my niece, and I don't know if you have that with your kids, so she's 7, is that she loves playing games, any type of game, and she has a lot of imagination, but when she starts losing, she gets mad. Did that ever happen to you?
Yes, that's yes. My well, our son, he will what
We are you are breaking a little, so maybe let's start again.
Yeah.
oh no.
You break a little, so you were talking about your son, but we weren't catching you clearly.
Yes. Can you hear me better?
Yes, now
Yeah.
yes.
I hope. Sorry, it's a little rainy out today, so our internet can be a little sketchy. Our son, he was getting angry at his rolls because he wasn't rolling well. It was really low numbers and a lot of like low. Yeah, I don't know how he was doing it, and he still kind of does it. It's like one of those players that always ends up.
Do they cheat? Do they cheat their rolls?
What was that?
Do they fudge the rolls?
Do they fetch the rolls?
No. We wouldn't. He'd be right in front of us, so we'd
Well,
see
that's
it.
I was thinking because I had a player who did that. He was
And
always
he was
fudging.
an adult,
Yeah,
almost.
he was an adult. Yes, he was 19 years old at the time. So, and
Yeah.
and he also made he was also angry at the rules, which is kind of strange because he wasn't a kid. But yeah, he was also always fudging the rules.
We've had that with our some newer people we've played with, you know, through video or just audio, because you don't get to see the roles. So, and sometimes you can just kind of get an idea that maybe they are fudging those roles.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've dealt with that. But
Yeah.
when you play with your kids, you're right there. You see what they roll.
And it's good for them to see that it's important to learn how to lose. What my niece does when she's losing a game is she's like, I don't like this rule anymore. I'll make up
Yeah.
a new rule.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't know how quite to handle it. I just either say, okay, well, you don't have to play, then don't play. You know, just you can go do something else.
Yeah.
Okay,
But I want to play.
they could play story games. Story games
Yep.
have a lot of options for that. There are usually there are not even dice rolls. So, well, but I was looking at it, but the cover of the red book is, well, it's easy to understand that it's a kids
Yeah, it
game.
has a mini. I was looking
Yeah.
for it the other day, but the game master screen has the bigger picture, so I couldn't find. I was looking for something that was as big, the cover of the book, but then I paid attention to the cover of the red book. Ah, there's a little munchkin there.
Yep.
That's not the right name, right? For
I
those.
don't know what is this, but you started when you started. It wasn't Dungeons and Delvers. It was still Dungeon World, right? When you started writing.
Creating games, or at least creating like supplements and classes. We started with Dungeon World. Initially, for some reason, I don't know where it came from, but David had this idea of making a skeleton class for Dungeon World, and it just kind of spiraled out of control from there. And then I started getting involved by like, oh, I want to make this class. I want to make this class. And so I started with the pirate, and then I wanted to do the witch. And I did the Living Star, and I think there might have been a couple of others I definitely helped. Like we did it pretty much half and half, helping make the moves for those. And then we went into settings as well for Dungeon World to add to that, and treasure books. We also had treasure books. I know that one of the biggest ones, and I think he might have done a Kickstarter on this one too, I can't remember, but it was called A Sundered World. Now that one is basically a whole expanse of just you make up like islands, and there's dead god corpses, and you have this I forget what he called it, but like ethereal like cloud essence that you could even fly in. It was really quite a big thing he did there, and I helped with that and helped play test it with a lot of our groups. We did quite a few campaigns using Dungeon World and D20 Delvers for that. I know we have, it's pretty good book too that we sell on Drive-Thru RPG.
Sundered World, I'm not sure how they choose this on Drive-Thru, but it's the first book here on the hottest title, so it was very successful, and it still is.
People liked it.
So when we interviewed David, he mentioned that, well, as we were saying, that he started doing some things, and then people were asking for him to do more stuff for Dungeon World, but eventually he got tired of it because he didn't really like the powered by the apocalypse rules, right?
Yeah, it was fun. We did have fun at first, but there were some things that it kind of just wore down on us. I don't like the move structure, having to constantly create like 3 or more outcomes, like when we were making characters or classes, having to try and make it make sense with the moves, and like what would happen if you missed when you roll your dice. That always coming up with those missed, how you fail. That was not easy because you can only come up with so much. It ended up it became more complicated than what it was worth. You kind of had to force every action into one or more moves, and coming up with a new move on the fly in case players do something that just doesn't fit into an existing move. And it wasn't just that, creating settings for it was kind of a pain too, because you'd have to have a front, and then I think you had to have a grim portent, and then an impending doom, and there was like stages you have to create for the DM to use, and then it would come up with where is it, and the places and the people. It just kind of, I don't know, it just lacked the GM's ability to be more creative.
Yeah, we played the new edition of Cult that is powered by the apocalypse, and we read another book that was also powered by the but we didn't play it. But what we thought exactly is that the moves are really limiting.
Yes.
For the game master and
for the player also. I felt like it's a bit limiting also for the player. So it's interesting having someone on the other side that was writing adventures feeling the same way. So it's not just us.
I didn't even think about that, but just by reading the rules, you can get that there's a feeling there that something that's not right. Well, it probably works for some people, but not for everybody. I felt immediately.
How we came up with so much, honestly. And I even had stuff that I forgot about. I had one called Heart of Hemskill that I had created for Dungeon World at first, and then I moved it over to the kids game, and then I was moving it over to the D20. I was all over the board with that, and I think I'm still trying to finish it. It's a fairy tale kind of land where you have like a big bad wolf who takes people's skins and wears it just to look like a human, or there's a whole enchanted forest that the fairies control. There's a witch that has been turning kids into gingerbread minions, stuff like that.
That's nice. I think my niece would love that because she also likes, she likes fantasy, but she likes a little bit of horror. So if I tell her a scary story, she's like, tell me more.
And then I even had a pirate world setting I was doing, and I wrote quite a bit of it now that I remember it. And it was actually in response to the Pirate World Kickstarter that had been created for Dungeon World, which never actually finished. And even if I haven't finished mine, maybe I'll still get mine out before theirs comes out. That was like 7 years ago.
Oh God, that's so bad when that happens.
Yes, I know. That's really unfortunate that some of these
Yeah.
Kickstarters just couldn't finish.
You did the Dungeons and Dragons in a Kickstarter. Was it both of them, or how is your experience with Kickstarter? Sometimes it's really hard, right?
Yes. So it's just with Kickstarter, it's just like what a writer goes through, where they have a date to finish what they're writing, and sometimes you feel pressured to get the content out there, and the content might end up being not as good as what if you could just take your time on it. So that is our only problem with Kickstarter, and at this point we're probably not going to be doing another Kickstarter just because that we just want to make our stuff, get it out there, and if it takes off, it takes off.
Yeah, and then you feel, even if you take longer, then you feel a bit that you are cheating people, right? Because you said you're going to present this at that time, and then you don't deliver.
Yes, we had that problem with the Red Book. That was the big D20 one, not the kids version. And that was mostly because we had so much art involved, getting that out and making sure I could, and we were late getting that out, but I had to sit down and do a lot of coloring over like a 3-month span, because I had just had our third kid. And so I was just preoccupied when the Kickstarter was supposed to be finished, and just didn't get it out in time. But so that was the only thing. And we do have everything ready. People just needed to message us with information to get the printed cost books, and we ended up doing that through Lulu instead of Drive-Through RPG, because Lulu's much better in creating physical books than Drive-Through is.
Yeah, Miguel's books has been printed on Lulu.
Yes.
Are they really better? I've never noticed much of a difference, really. Well, it probably depends on if you can do a comparison. But
because we would do the 6x9s through Drive-Through, the size, and we could see that Drive-Through just sometimes, like your spine, it's just the lettering isn't right centered on, and sometimes it would just, the paper quality wasn't as nice as Lulu. So we did get a little bit of a difference that we appreciated more through Lulu.
We didn't mention that yet, but as you were talking about it, it's time for that. You also do the drawings, do the art.
Yes.
So that's one of the reasons the Kickstarters probably you don't have to do them, because you can do both writing and art. So
right, you don't need the funds for buying art, because we will do it ourselves. But for the Kickstarters, we were doing it basically for the time, paying, giving us money for the time we're taking on making it. So
so David does the drawings, and you do the coloring, right? That's it.
Yes, believe me, you don't want me to do the drawings.
Well, you do a nice work of coloring. You already told this when we interviewed David, but I really like your art, both of you, right? Because it's a collective work. And I really like the fact that you have a distinctive style. It's not like this generic 5th edition art.
Right.
You can say, okay, this was made by the Guylls. It looks the right way.
Yeah, he does a really good job with making things look a certain way with his line art. And then he just pretty much allows me to decide how I want to color it. Sometimes he'll have specific, like, hey, this one, like a lemur, this one's supposed to be a bunch of flesh all together. Oh, okay, then I can do that. But most of the time he lets me just creatively figure out what colors I want to do.
I can't remember if we asked him that, but is David a professional illustrator or it's just a hobby?
He has done commissions for people, and he's always, ever since he was young, he's always drawn. So he has a lot of experience. I would call him professional at this point.
Mhm.
But didn't have any formal training, so it's just natural talent and
Yeah,
probably a lot of persistence.
yeah,
Good.
persistence.
And how long does it take you to color one of those drawings? Because they are the ones in the cover, like the cover of the kids' book or the Escape from the Flash Catacombs. They are drawings with a lot of details. So how long does it take you?
I would say as long as I'm not doing it all day long, and I take a couple hours here or there, and it takes me a couple of days, I would say. Maybe longer, depending on what I'm doing.
This is all digital art?
Yes, we have Wacom tablets that we use to. I mean, I use it like we use the pen and on the pad, and sometimes I've been learning a lot more about Photoshop as I've been coloring, and how to create like my own types of paintbrushes to use to make certain like splotching or how to adjust a paintbrush to do what I want it to do. I've learned a lot since then, but we do mostly through Photoshop.
This wasn't mentioned in David's interview because we didn't know it back then, but you also did art for Child and
And
maybe
the layout.
and the layout, yes, and probably other games. I'm not sure. Was that just Child or other vendor games?
Let's see. There was Child. I thought there was one more that we did. Possibly. I know we also did commission work for a guy who was doing comics or poster type settings, and I forget what it was, like gray. It wasn't Gray Hawk type stuff. I can't remember at the moment, but he did art for that. And then we also did some art for one of our players who created a Dungeon World setting, I believe. And that was called Baldur's Bounty. I really like the cover I did for that one. If I wish I could show it to you, but
You need to look for it. Look for it on
yeah,
drive-thru. And you have a lot of stock art also that you sell on drive-thru, right? So if anyone is interested in get some interesting art for their games.
right. And it's a lot of art. It's not just 4 or 5 pieces.
Yeah, it's a lot, but that some of that was used in some of your books, right?
Yeah, exactly. We'll just allow people to use that art that we've already created from our books in their own stuff.
It makes sense. You already had the effort, so.
I was just going to say we have had a few people that we found they used it in their own stuff. So.
Yeah, we discovered that we knew that David was doing the layout for Salt because I bought the books, and then if you just noticed, Miguel was opening the book and he says, "Oh, layout by David Guyll."
Yeah,
I didn't know.
Helped with some of that layout. I know I'm not a layout person, but I do know InDesign as well. I don't like doing layout. Let's just put it that way.
So what you like? Okay, I'm not gonna put layouts, but you prefer to write or you prefer to color? It's totally different things. So.
Yes. Oh, definitely write in color. The layout, I mean, maybe if I was in charge of my own, it wouldn't be so bad, but it's such tedious work that's just not for me. David's much better at that than I am.
Yeah, Miguel started doing the layouts some time ago. I did offer to help, but thankfully he said no. Because I would suck at it. I'm not a very artistical person.
It doesn't
Very
take
recently, so.
no, it doesn't take artistic work. It takes
No,
structure.
Yeah, but I don't take attention to details also. So I can look and say this is wrong, but this needs to be a space up or a space down. I don't notice that kind of thing.
Even though having an artistic sense and aesthetical sense helps because you don't have to spend too much time wondering what are we going to do and which colors to use and all that.
He does have me help figure out, okay, what does this look better than this layout wise? like in our big red book one for D20, we did some splotches behind some of our just single characters. I helped with that, like figure out what color would be what kind of splotch I wanted in the background, like a little watercolor flare there. So I do help a little bit with our layout, but that layout's mostly him.
Yeah, it's most of the layout is boring, right? Just ordering
Yep.
ordering text. Yeah.
And pictures, of course.
Yes.
That's the crazy part, and you have to deal with both. Just text. If it was just text, it would be simple. No problem. So there are lots of dungeon roll books on Drive-Thru. How long did you publish these ones? Published and wrote. Of course.
You mean how
For how long did
just
you?
Dungeon World?
Yeah.
Boy, that's a good question. I think we did it for at least 5 years.
Yeah.
Moved around a bit until we ended up where we are now, and I know we were still doing it where we are now, so I would have to say at least 5 years.
So Dungeons and Delvers is 5 years too? Was the following 5 years?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, we've been working on our own stuff for at least 5 years as well.
So what's next?
Yeah, I know when we talked to David, he had a lot of plans, but he wasn't really sure what was going to happen next.
So
we do have a lot of stuff that we're just not sure what we're gonna finish. We have, let's see.
there was a Western, right?
Yeah, the Western. It's called Cowboys and Cthulhu. It's it's got guns. It's got like Lovecraftian horrors, obviously, because it's Cthulhu in it. There's magic, alchemy, alien technology. You can have normal guns, but you could also have like a lightning gun. So that one's gonna be interesting once he gets done with that. And I think there's even like a shaman.
Is this going to be OSR too?
I believe he's doing this based off of our Delvers. Yeah. Then he has another one that he's been having me help with, which is Ashes After Ragnarok. So it's like a Norse apocalypse with the gods, dead god bodies that have fallen onto the land. Well, I think we play tested it a couple times as well so far, and that was interesting. We did some kind of like lake that had a bunch of ships, like a lake that was dried up. There's a bunch of ships, and we had to go deal with some ghosts in the ships. One ship had a bunch of ghosts that wanted this other ship a bunch of ghosts to, that they were fighting, and so we had to choose which one we were gonna help. It's interesting, and hopefully he gets that off the ground as well.
A lot of artwork coming your way also.
That's true. See, that's the hard part, is when we come up with something and we write something, then we got to go now for the art, and that again ends up making it take, I would say, even about a half a year to get done. So at least a half a year.
Yeah, you guys have the bonus of don't having to pay for the art, but it does take a lot of time to have everything done.
And every so often between writing, I know he does do his art. And then whenever he feels like he wants to get something out, then he's like, hey, I need you to color. So then that's how that happens.
I also remember when we interviewed David that he talked about something that you were writing to play with the kids. That was something that had apes or a gorilla. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because it sounds funny, and he was very intrigued. He was like, I want to know what that is all about. I don't know yet.
Right. So it was interesting how it kind of manifested. It went from, I saw a picture of a Slovenian castle that I liked, and it actually had history of where bandits took over and were held up in the fortress. And there's even an escape tunnel in the back of it because it's in a cliffside. And I was like, well, this is interesting. I'll do this for the kids, because we were trying to come up, taking turns. Like the kids would have their time to do their own setting, and then we would do ours. And then for some reason, I had like this out of the blue in my head. I was like, you know what? How would I make it like a monkey bandit king with a horde of monkeys that he controls? I'll hold up and make it in a jungle setting instead. And it's so he's like half jungle giant, so he can communicate with the monkeys and tell them what to do and teach them how to use, like, swords or other kind of weapons, and have armor, and just kind of terrorize the little nearby villages and stuff like that, and have the kids go in there and fight them.
It makes me think of Monkey Island.
Yeah,
because there's I don't remember, there's a pirate ship full of monkeys, right?
Yeah,
At some point.
I've never played it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I just played. I don't think I finished it, because when I used to play video games, it was the video game that my cousin played. Although he was younger than me, so he played a lot of video games. So I played the ones that, and sometimes he just called me because he said, especially with these graphic adventures, he was stuck and he was like, Sylvia, come here, I need your help.
That's pretty good.
Was that the first Monkey Island, or it was a remake?
I'm not sure.
I remember playing. It probably wasn't, because I remember playing.
There was more than one Monkey Island.
Yeah. Okay, that's it.
So there was one that when you had to go to a ship, and there was the ship was full of monkeys, and there was a monkey captain, and that was one of the parts that he needed my help with.
I can't remember that
He
one.
didn't know how to. There was something that he was stuck at the monkey ship.
I was never a fan of graphic adventures, because there's always some stupid objects that you must use. There's always a towel and a stick, and I can't figure it out, really.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that stuff either.
Yeah, I played it because that was what I had. But in a way, my cousin, he learned English because of those games. Because at the time they had no Portuguese version, so he got really good at English really soon, because he was playing computer games. And there was no those walkthroughs at the time, so he just called me and said, Sylvia, come here.
I improved my English by reading role-playing games, basically. It was all Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It was the one I was reading when I was 16 or 17.
And if I'm wrong, that was pretty technical, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a bit. There were big books, not like Dungeons and Dragons that have 80 pages. Advanced was, I don't know, 100 pages, 200 pages maybe. That's why I had to learn, because it was very, very intense. A lot of
boring.
text and boring. Yes, too many rules. I don't like rules a lot. I've never liked rules. It gets boring. But I also never could get into narrative games, story games. I don't like them either. So I prefer learning the rules, even if I don't like them a lot, than playing story games. They don't work for me.
So Melissa, you played 3rd edition, 4th edition, and 5th edition. So do you felt any difference between them? What was the one that you liked most? And what do you think of 5th edition?
Probably
because a lot of people don't like it.
Well, it's kind of a mix between liking 3rd and 4th edition. I liked 4th edition for how many things you could do for your class, but that also was overwhelming at the same time. But 3rd edition seemed to have a lot less complexion there. So if I had to choose one of them in Dungeons and Dragons, I would choose 3rd edition. But again, I don't really have that much experience playing it for very long. So my opinion is a little.
So you didn't even start with 5th edition?
No, it was 3rd.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean you never tried. That's what I meant.
No, they play tested.
Oh, you play tested, yeah.
No, not with what came out, because by that point we had
it changed.
D20.
Yeah, so it changed a lot between the playtesting and the final version.
From what I can remember, it seemed like it did. They started really nerfing some of the classes. So then we were like, this isn't as fun as we thought it was going to be. Because I remember David being pretty excited about a new edition coming out and really wanted to play testing, and then being quite disappointed. And that's where he's like, you know what? I'm just going to do my own thing because I've been meaning to anyways. So, and that's,
In a way, it was good.
yeah.
He didn't like because it gave him encouragement to do his own game.
Mm-hmm. And because he knew that I could help, I just started becoming involved.
That's good. People playing the same games and helping each other doing stuff.
Well, he always said that I had an outsider's perspective on it because of the fact that I didn't have a history there. And that helped.
Yeah, looking at the rules and all that from a different perspective. Yeah, it's probably helpful.
I agree, because sometimes I feel that there's some people, and I don't judge them because I also have the same, just not about Dungeons and Dragons, but probably the game that you played most and the rules that you played most, you're gonna like more because you're more familiar with them. And you do have a fresher perspective. Probably it helps David's playtest his rules.
It really did. Yeah, he's like, well, how did you feel in that little combat, or how did you feel using this skill? Did you? And so then I'd give him my perspective on how it all went.
A lot of people are complaining about the 5th edition because it's becoming childish and too geared towards younger people.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing as well. I wouldn't know again. I just really read it or look into it, so I don't really know what they've been what's changed as much. I just hear the ramblings of people who are dissatisfied with how it's turned out.
Yeah, I never looked at it either. Just the covers and what some people wrote about it. The art isn't good. It's too
right.
Bland.
Absolutely. I since I've been coloring for him and been he's been trying to teach me how to look at art. Yes, I can see that some of this the art, I'm just wondering who it's just not as professional as it used to be. Who are these people that they're hiring to do this art?
Yeah.
I think because of people are doing it digitally, it may be easier for some people. So there may be people that are not that good artists, but the computer makes it easier for them.
Yeah, like they're not true professionals in a way, right?
Exactly.
As I was saying before, I started with the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and the art was really great. Those old books at well, not that old, because I don't really like the first ones from the 70s. Those are kind of not my style. Just drawings, and they aren't colored. But the ones from the 80s, from the mid 80s forward, early 90s, the art was very good. Larry Elmore and other artists.
Yeah, I think we've got some books, some actual art books from those people in our house, just because David will research how they do certain things, the way they draw.
Yeah, those guys were real artists, no, not like what they
and
have
didn't
today.
have computers to help them also, because they had to do everything, so they had to be really good.
And at least the covers were great, even when the inside art wasn't that great. The covers were really great. And nowadays, even the covers are rubbish sometimes. It all looks the same.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and we can say that your books don't suffer from that. Yeah, you guys have great covers.
Good, we try.
Did you ever thought about, because okay, you are involved a lot on writing things for the kids' adventures, and you also well, you don't draw, but you color. Do you ever thought about writing fiction for kids?
Not for kids, no. I did. We had quite a large campaign using the Age of Worms setting and using Delvers. At first we were using Black Book, then he wanted to try morphing it into Red Book. And that campaign, I think, had about 40 something sessions, possibly more. It was a 2-year-long campaign. We did a lot. There was a wizard that one character was a wizard that turned into a necromancer. The other character was a cleric, a dwarven cleric that had their dwarven gods. And then my character was a rogue at first, an elven rogue. And then I was like, well, we ended up finding an owlbear with her little owlbear cub. And I was like, well, I want to take the cub. So how can I do that? I want that as a pet, 'cause I like pets. I always like, having pets in the game. So I said, how can I do it? He's like, well, we could have you multi-class into Ranger. It's like, okay, let's do that. So we multi-classed into Ranger. And then from there on, I ended up doing a lot of sneaking. I was like, listen, I want to be able to see in the dark. This is ridiculous. I shouldn't be holding a torch and sneaking around in a tunnel. He's like, well, you could multi-class into Wizard. I was like, okay, I'll multi-class into Wizard. And I went and we ended up creating a divination tree that way for me to see in the dark. I started reading people's minds, using like a scrying eye. And I had my owlbear pet, and I was also being a rogue, sneaking around. So I had 3 different classes in one character. And then because I liked her so much, her name was Sumia, I started writing short stories about her. So I have been trying to get into writing as well, but not quite into the kids fiction.
Yeah, but that sounds like an interesting character for a fantasy book.
Yeah. So I've been working on that too.
Cool. I had something that I was going to ask, but then I forgot it, but now I remembered again. That's why I had this moment, sorry. Normally when you play, do you always prefer to play female characters, or you also play male? And this is just for curiosity.
No, I mean, I have played male. They're mostly like ones that have been pre-rolled up for David to have us play test, and that's fine. I do typically like playing characters, and I typically like playing characters that are I guess that are female, and sometimes they're more reserved, but a lot of the other times if no one wants to do anything, then I'm going to step up and do it. Like if there's a conversation and then we're not sure what to do, I'll be like, you know what? I'm just going to have my character do this and just see what happens. And Sumia was quite like that. And it was funny because she ended up almost dying, I don't know how many times, because of me going out there, just putting her, you know what, I'm going to just try this. Let's just do that. And she's, even though we haven't finished the campaign, she is still alive. So
yeah, I sometimes do that, and sometimes in our group I have another player that also does that, but then we have someone who's more cautious and like, are you guys doing that? That's not a good idea. And we're like, yes, but things need to happen. Yes. And my character doesn't know this is not a good idea.
There's one thing I don't really like playing. I don't like playing fighters because I don't know why. I'm just not in the front type of person. I will do it, here and there depending on the situation, but I'm not I don't like being in the front lines. And my preferred class typically is actually the bard. I know a lot of people don't like bards. Bards are weak.
I think everybody hates them. They are boring. They sing.
Like bards because I have a musical background.
Okay, makes sense. But you don't sing, right?
No singing. I used to be in a band and everything. I used to
why did you play it?
Bassoon, marimba, stuff like that. So cool. I just have that musical.
Yeah,
ability.
I was asking just because I sometimes play males, especially when it's when they're playing characters that are always already pre-generated, but Miguel doesn't like it. He likes to have.
I hate it when people are playing.
Especially there are some guys that play women, but they don't really know how to play women.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That is a bit strange.
That's something that happened a lot when people are teenagers and there are only guys playing the game, and well, okay, it's always male characters and someone wants to play a female character, but then she just solves everything by seducing the enemies, and then it's boring.
Yeah. No, I don't do any seducing with my characters at all. I will do bluffs. I will do like trying to convince them of something that, especially with my rogue that I had, I would try and convince them of lies and whatnot and use my bluff. I think my bluff was pretty high too at the time when we were play testing. So I usually got away with everything.
I don't think we mentioned that, but you were the first, since we're talking about males and females, you were the first woman we invited for these interviews. Well, we haven't been interviewing for a long time, just 3 months, I think, but still there aren't
Yeah.
a lot of women game designers, especially in OSR, I think.
Especially unless they have, they are a bit wokey.
Yeah, blue-haired people.
On that part of the USR, there's probably some females.
Yeah, well, the story games have much more, I think, female players and probably game masters also.
Yeah, and it annoys me because I want to have more women on the, well, I'm going to call it the show and be presumptuous. And and break this taboo that women don't play role-playing games, or that OSR guys don't like to have women playing, because that makes no sense. And like you said, right, the first time you played, there were 2 women on the group.
It was, well, it was me. Yeah, it was me and another woman. She did okay. She didn't have, she knew more than I did, obviously, because she had done it longer than I had. It was my first game anyways. So, but she wasn't wokey or anything. She turned kind of that way later on. I think she's kind of going with the trend.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And, but she seemed to do just fine. And
Yeah.
the idea that some people don't want to play with women, I just have a feeling that has to do with the women that they've encountered. I mean, if they try and like control the situation because they think as a woman I have that, privilege to do so, then that's gonna put you off.
Yeah. We actually played with, not now, I'm the only woman in the group, but we played with a lot of women, right, Miguel? You always had.
Almost always.
Well, okay.
When I first started, I didn't have. Well, we were young, yeah, and there weren't many women playing here. So in the early 90s, there weren't many people playing, not even men. So it was difficult to find players. But well, from the point where, well, when I started having girlfriends, I invited them. Basically that. So they weren't really role players, but they were playing because, well, they were the invited girlfriend. But later, I like to have people interested. So it's that kind of things stopped. I stopped inviting my ex-girlfriend when she wasn't interested anymore. So.
But she was still your girlfriend at the time.
Yeah, she was, but she stopped playing. Clear. It's it's not the same thing. It's when people just playing because they live there, and it's not really a good choice. But but from my experience, I can say that no one was stopping girls or women from playing.
Yeah, that's the same experience I've had. Is no one's stopped me or had a problem with how I do stuff. And I know David in the past with some of his exes, they didn't seem to understand or want to, I don't know, they just didn't care possibly, or got as involved in it as he would have liked. And once he saw that I was actually a pretty good video gamer and I liked kind of the same movies, everything like that, I think he realized that I wasn't like all the other ones.
Yeah, I would say that David and Miguel are very lucky guys, because they ended up having wives that like role-playing games so much that they agreed to create games. Yeah. Game master and everything. You lucky bastards.
You gotta be with somebody who's got similar interests You can't just be at the house and not
Yeah.
do something together.
Yeah, and we have some players that we know that know some persons that okay, I'm gonna role play, but I can't do it as often as I can because my wife doesn't like it.
Yep,
Yeah, we've got a couple of those.
that happens a lot. Yeah. In our case, that's not a problem.
Sometimes the cats don't like it.
Yeah, the cats hate it. They usually interrupt after a couple of hours. They like to interrupt.
Do you also like horror? And I'm asking this because although David writes and your games are, of course, fantasy, but they have a very horror feeling to that. And some of the characters you create for Dungeon World were like the skeleton, and they were like horror tropes.
Yeah, I guess he's more into the horror than I am. I don't mind, like, a good horror movie, especially if it's done well. I can't think of any off the top of my head that I really liked. I know I like a lot of Guillermo del Toro horror.
Mhm.
Yeah, they have those
his
dreamy.
He has a very unique style.
It's kind of a
of
dark
course,
fantasy, right?
Yes,
yeah, that.
it's very dreamy and aesthetical. It's very.
I can't think of any good horrors off the top of my head, unfortunately.
But you prefer the ones with a fairy tale feeling? Because there's a lot of type of horrors, right? There's like the gory. So I guess you don't like the gory with lots of blood.
No, I don't mind gore and blood either. I really don't. I will watch that too. I just wish I could think of some stuff off the top of my head that I've seen that I enjoy in terms of movies. But with RPGs, he really likes like Lovecraftian stuff. And I think I read a couple of Lovecraftian stories just to get familiar with that mindset, I guess.
Have you
with
played
what H
Call of Cthulhu?
does. No, I don't think we tried Call of Cthulhu. We have a Cthulhu board game that we did, which was interesting. We liked painting miniatures. So we would take a lot of board game miniatures and actually paint those for the games to make it look more interesting. We've got tons of like Reaper miniatures we've painted, even Super Dungeon Explorer kid game type stuff we painted. So, but the Cthulhu stuff, again, I'm not as familiar with it as he is in the horror there. But I don't mind horror. I'm not like,
okay, yeah, blood. Yeah.
No.
Of course not. You're a role player.
Exactly. No.
The Western will have some Lovecraftian elements, right? The Western role-playing game, of course.
Yeah, that one's going to be interesting, to say the least.
Mhm.
There was another one he mentioned. It's called Blood for Baphomet. That one, well, I guess I shouldn't probably talk about it because it'll probably offend somebody, but it's going to be something quite offensive. Let's put it that way. That will probably be gory.
That's good.
I know that.
Yeah, I think gore sometimes it can be beautiful if it's well done. Visually, it can be very appealing.
It can. It has to be done right.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about, I don't know if you guys saw it. If not, a film that is quite, well, recent, Mandy, with Nicolas Cage. That someone kills his girlfriend and he just goes insane, his wife, and he decides to go and kill the guys that killed his wife, and they're very scary. Did you saw that one?
Yes, I actually did see that one. He does this whole scene in a bathroom.
Yeah,
Absolutely insane. Of course, it's Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
But we did.
it's a very nice, it's a very beautiful film, right? How did you thought about it as an artist? Because I thought it was very beautiful.
It was well done, and it just maybe not the plot necessarily.
Yeah.
The visual of it, I enjoyed.
Yeah, the story doesn't matter. Nicolas Cage is going insane.
When it comes to movies, visuals matter to me. Like one of my favorite movies is The Fountain. I'm a pretty big fan of the person who does those. I can't remember his name for some reason. I just can't remember his name because he did Pi. He did Requiem for a Dream.
Aronofsky.
Yeah.
Darren Aronofsky.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, I love The Fountain for some reason. Love the soundtrack. Love the visuals. I don't think the movie really makes.
I don't remember the
I
story.
can't remember that one.
But
I
I
think
remember it's a beautiful. But I remember it's beautiful. But I don't remember the story.
Yeah.
I really like the Black Swan. That's also for by him, right?
yeah, it is. I think
I love that one.
my favorite movie is something older than those. I can't remember. I was trying to find it here online. Let me check. I don't know. Well, I saw Pi. I liked Pi, yeah, but not Reckon for a Dream also, and whatever.
Yes,
what
of course.
else?
Requiem for a Dream is.
What
It's-
else?
And I love the music also on that one on Requiem.
Yeah,
There were,
the music is
I-
very good.
it was
Yeah.
my soundtrack for work during some months.
Or even Pi had a pretty interesting soundtrack, very digital, I guess.
I remember now. Well, I didn't remember. I checked on the EMDb. The Wrestler. It's my favorite movie.
Yeah.
I love the Wrestler. That's the kind. I love that kind of character.
Yeah, like he
Beaten up and all.
kind of goes out in a little bit of a blaze of glory to himself, I
Yeah.
guess, in a
Yeah.
way. And it's unfortunate because a lot of his movies are typically sad, but there's a beauty to it.
Yes, exactly. There is a beauty in sadness. I agree with you. And sometimes I like sad movies because of that. And people don't understand. Oh, Sylvia, why are you so depressed? No, but there's beauty in dark things.
Yeah, we are fans of dark stuff, very dark stuff always.
Now I had another question, but I already forgot it. So if you want to ask something else, I'm having Alzheimer's today.
Temporary Alzheimer's.
Yes, temporary. I'm blacking out.
Okay, so what about fantasy? Are you a fantasy reader and fan?
Yeah. Yes, I'm a big fantasy adventure hero's journey, and I actually read the book called Hero's Journey. It's not actually HERO, it's HIREO. I read that one and I read the second one to that. Those were good. It's actually, I think it was an inspiration for Gamma World, or it's similar to Gamma World. I can't remember. But I read those were good. And so I'm a big, person on the character going through the steps of accomplishing their goals. And so I do read quite a bit of fantasy adventure. And one of my favorites is the Holdstock series. And the Hollowing is the last one of that, but I read the whole series that leads up to the Hollowing. And that one's pretty good. It's like basically it's about a father trying to find his son that ended up going into a forest that creates like mythos through imagination. Like if you go into the forest and you think of like Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, the forest will start creating the Knights of the Round Table for you to like encounter, stuff like that. So it's really neat.
That would be interesting for a role-playing game, but it'll be hard. It will be hard.
You
don't like Tolkien, right?
No, I just it's not that I don't like Tolkien. I just haven't tried reading.
Yeah, don't try. Tolkien is boring, and I'm sorry to our followers, but yeah, Tolkien is a bit boring.
We are losing subscribers.
I read the books after I saw the films, and I really liked the films. The first ones, they were so well made, and in that time, right, and groundbreaking. And I read the books, and I was it's boring.
And then there's a TV show.
Let's not talk about the TV show. There's not a TV show yet.
Yeah, well, it's probably done already.
I know there's the cartoon, The Hobbit.
Never seen the cartoon.
Yeah.
I didn't see it either. I just know of it.
Yeah. And there's the Hobbit films. So we didn't saw that one either. But yeah, The Lord of the Rings was a very well made movie. Also very good looking.
I haven't seen the movie. Well, not all. I've seen bits of the movies, but never saw.
That's how much he likes fantasy.
Yeah, I liked the fantasy. I've seen the 2 Hobbit films as well. I really like the wizard that has the rabbits as basically horses, because I like rabbits. I thought that was great. Love that part, but the movies are kind of boring.
Yeah, because I don't think the story of The Hobbit is long enough for they did it 2 or 3 movies. I don't know. And
Yeah.
they had to fill they had to fill it up because the movies always have. That's the thing I don't like about. Don't read that much fantasy because of that, because the series are always really long. And
That's
then you commit to reading a lot of books because I want to know what's going to happen.
yeah. Sometimes they won't end them, and it just keeps going. So
Exactly. So that is my. I used to avoid fantasy because of that. Now I'm starting to try to read it again because I'm writing scenarios that are mostly fantasy because there's someone else sitting next to me that doesn't want to write fantasy.
I'm not.
Uh,
I'm not really sitting next to you,
yes, but
just
just pretend.
virtually.
But the fact, I always try to look for standalones because I don't want to commit to a long series of books.
My favorite fantasy movie is Monty Python's Holy Grail.
that's
That
a good one.
that's a good one. And
We recently had our kids watch it to get, because my husband and I will say, references to movies or shows and whatnot, and sometimes we just feel like they need to catch up.
Yeah, that's important because I think there's a problem. Kids these days probably don't see the old things because they don't need to because there's so many things now. When we were kids, it wasn't like that. There was less stuff.
Yeah.
I'm an old man. When I was a kid, there was nothing. There wasn't. They
There was
haven't.
no TV.
They haven't invented TV yet. Well, they haven't invented TV, but we had only black and white TV sets here. They existed already, but most people didn't have them at home.
Wow.
Also because at the time, yeah, I'm old. At the time, Portuguese TV was black and white, so why should we buy a color TV set if you couldn't pick up a network broadcasting in color? So there was no need for that.
And we only had two channels. But I remember what was the question that I wanted to do because I forgot it because we were talking about other things. So if you were to write something like a role playing just by yourself, what was any specific style that you would like to try?
I definitely want to try some kind of murder mystery stuff. I know it doesn't sound adventurous, but I'm a big fan of watching those documentaries on like unsolved mysteries of killings like Jack the Ripper, or even just ones that were caught, like serial killers, stuff like that. I find what detectives do very fascinating. It's funny because I'm not a detective or anything, and I'm not a professional at it, but there are things that I'll notice. I'll say to my kids, like, oh, you mean this is probably what happened? They're like, how do you know that? And I'm like, just based on statistically what would be the most likely, what happened. That's how I know. And I know them personality wise. So, but I typically can find things around the house easier. So I just like solving.
That's because you're a woman. I like playing mysteries and I like reading. I read a lot of thrillers and I try to figure out who is the killer before.
I haven't quite gotten into the thrillers yet, which I really want to.
Yeah, I can recommend you some.
Okay.
I can ping you offline. There's one that the last ones that I read that are by a Irish writer, a woman, that it's called the Dublin Murder Squad, and each book is centered in a different character, a different detective, and what is always happening is that they are in a specific case that will burn them out.
Nice.
So it's a series, but it's not the same detective always investigating, because that's something that sometimes I also don't like. It gets annoying. So it's always a different. Sometimes they appear like a secondary character in the book, and in the other one, they will be the main character. It's I think her name is Tana French. Let me just double check.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't help there.
Yeah, the most famous one is In the Woods. So it's the first one. It's and it's a pair of detectives that are investigating the disappearing and murdering of a 12-year-old girl.
Okay.
And the guy that is doing the investigation just gets too much involved because there's some background story. When he was a kid, he was abducted for some time, or he ran away from home. He doesn't remember what happens. So he takes that story very personally. And it makes a mess.
Huh.
I like that the characters always get burned out.
No, that's fine, but it's at least something, even if it's, I just read one book, that sounds interesting enough to me.
Yes, exactly. Because you don't have any continuity. You can read any one of them. I will send you the
Okay.
name. But yeah, I would like to write. I would like to actually game master some murder mysteries. But Miguel always ignores the clues that I sent.
Yeah, I'm not good at that.
Yeah, he's awful. So
I like reading detective stories, Sherlock Holmes and things like that, but I was never paying attention. I just liked reading how he does his magic and then, okay, but I don't follow the clues. I just, oh, okay, he discovered everything. He knows. He looks at you and he knows that what you had for breakfast 2 years ago. That's great, but I don't follow the clues. So I'm not good for that. That's why I don't game master murder mysteries, at least not in that sense. So I can game master a story about a murder, but it's not about clues. It's more about.
David has actually game mastered a murder mystery, and it was interesting because he didn't even put the clues out there. Like he wasn't specifically saying, oh, but it's kind of weird over here or whatnot. We actually, as players, figured it out.
mhm.
So he did a very good job. It was like a dryad murder mystery, where a dryad attacks a village, and it disguises itself like as a plant monster, and they find out that a ranger like in the woods was murdered, so they go and investigate it and end up finding out it's the dryad. Well, he might change a little bit. There's other elements to that setting that were really interesting, but I won't get into it because it's supposed to be a
Yeah,
mystery.
you don't spoil. But yeah, the idea that also with the murder mystery, you can put it in fantasy. And
Yeah, it can work.
yeah, I'm trying to think of fantasy fantasy can be more versatile. It's not just dungeons and, and dragons.
Well, for example, The Witcher, the Witcher game, the computer games, they are very lots of things happen there, including murder mysteries and cleaning pots.
I like playing those types of video games. I have not picked up The Witcher. He keeps telling me to do so.
Yeah,
And
it's a
but
great game.
I play stuff like the old Fallout and the new Fallout, and then I played Red Dead Redemption. I'll even play Grand Theft Auto games. I know I don't think there are very many women who will pick up a Grand Theft Auto
I don't
game.
play because I suck at driving on the computer. I also suck at driving in real life, but it's worse in the computer.
I'm a very bad driver well, in real life I don't drive, but that's not a problem. So, but in Grand Theft Auto, I'm a very bad driver, but I don't mind because you can run away from the police then. So that's what I spend all the time running away from them and running over people and all that.
No, I like racing games. I've done racing. I get pretty good at racing games for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm awful. Maybe I'm better now that I learned how to drive, but when I was a kid, I was awful, and then I don't want to play this. Also, soccer games. There was a lot of games in Portugal that were football simulators. Okay, soccer for you guys, and I was also awful at those. Sometimes someone asked me to play.
Yeah. No sports games for me. I'm not a big sports fan.
I didn't like soccer, but I played those games because it's a computer game.
Sure.
Just guys shooting a ball, so it's the same thing as pinball or something like that.
Yeah, but The Witcher is nice. I can also recommend, if you guys haven't read it, the books, not the TV show.
Okay.
We saw the TV show, and it also has a very annoying bard.
Yeah, the bard was awful.
We haven't tried the TV show yet, and
Yeah, don't try it. You're not gonna like it. No.
Yeah, TV shows are things that you should avoid right now. Well, at least new TV shows.
Yeah, most TV shows. Yeah, we watch a lot of the stuff we used to watch when we do watch TV shows.
So, do you have any other question?
No, I think I asked everything that I had on my to ask list. I don't have anything forgotten anymore.
Anything you'd like to add, Melissa?
No, not really. We're very pleased that many people at least like what we do. They like our art, and we're just going to keep going with what we're doing.
And we hope to see new things coming from you guys.
Yes, that one that you mentioned about blood and Baphomet, I will probably buy that one and the Western also. The
Yeah,
Western.
that one is definitely going to have a lot of offensive stuff in it. Just that's more David's doing than I, but he'll probably definitely get me involved in it. And I don't know that much detail wise. I just know that it's to go against all the woke.
Mhm.
So I'll have to ask him about that.
Yeah.
I think
can-
on privately on
He's
Messenger.
gonna ask when is going to, when is it going to be out? When is it
And
going to be out?
what's it about and all that. So
That's the only problem. I don't know if you guys are that interested in it. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
can push to get it out there.
yeah, that's probably, well, we'll have to interview him again when
Yeah.
that's get done.
Well, that's a good excuse.
Yeah. Okay, so
thank you, Melissa.
thank you for
Yeah.
coming,
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
and we will meet on social media.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye. Have a nice weekend.
You too.
Bye bye, everyone. So we will put the links for David and Melissa's work on Drive-Thru, so you can
Yes.
check it and buy some stuff.
And David's interview, by the way,
Exactly.
because probably they go well together. Okay, so a nice weekend for everybody. Bye-bye.